Signs of the Southland for Sunday, the 16th of September, 2025. I feel like I've been saying 2024 on all of these, so you can go have some timey-wimey stuff in your back feed. But welcome back to the 2025 edition of your favorite Georgia Tech numbers and words. My name is Akshay Easwaran, and joining me today from a much less gross than yesterday, Atlanta, Georgia, are Jack, Purdy, and Jake Grant. Gentlemen, how are you doing on the first Super Sunday of 2025?
I love how for us, after football season ends, that just means the sports calendar gets busier for us. It doesn't go the other way. This is when we kick it into high gear.
Yeah, as a college sports guy, more writ large and a baseball, first and foremost for my pro sports, I've never gotten the whole like February is a quiet month. It's like, yeah, the Super Bowl's over. We got NBA, we got NHL, baseball, spring training's kicking up here, and then in
NHL,
our
it's all
world,
about the Four Nations Cup now, baby.
Four
well,
Nations
yeah,
face off,
there's
baby.
that too.
That was amazing. That
Oops.
was the best. That was the most hockey I've watched in a long time, and I'm so glad I was like, "Oh, this is tonight. Let me give this a shot." And then three
You
fights.
and probably like a couple million people. I think that's not to do, a
Well, it was an
sport that
ABC
we
game.
don't.
It was an ABC game, so yeah.
Yeah, but even the not to do like TV ratings discourse, which is my least favorite type of discourse.
Oh, I love this.
Actually, like second or third least favorite. Anyway, like I think these it was like the Canada Sweden game or whatever the first game of the series
Hmm.
was the highest rated hockey game on network television ever. Some ridiculous
Some
number
very
it
high. Yeah,
got.
no, that makes sense. Yeah, no,
And I
if it
was
isn't
like,
that, it's an Olympics game. So yeah,
yeah,
makes
and
sense.
I
Yeah.
saw, well, yeah, probably NHL related. It's not, these aren't real international games.
I mean, it's hockey though. If they play, it's real for them. That's what's great about it. Is it does not
Oh,
matter
I
what
agree.
the context is. They are going to. I mean, as we saw last night, they're just going to go. Now that I see this, I kind of just want the NBA to be like, okay, we'll just do that next year and give us a USA Serbia game. Just just one more. It'd be so fun. It'd be so fun.
All right, so here's a skeet from Alex Kirshner, a split zone duo from last night. Quote, the Four Nations is more proof that the number one thing for answering, quote, is this sporting event good, end quote, is, quote, do the best players care about it?
Yep.
If they care, we will care.
Yep.
And this was a quote tweet, or this was quote tweeted by a big NBA head, Seth Partnow, who said, "This is why the in-season tournament has worked so far, and the All-Star game does not." I'm
I've
not
got
sure that I
I've
have watched a single minute of in-season tournament action, but I
I've
am
got
also a
30.
self-admitted basketball neutral. So
I've got 30 minutes on that. That
Neutral.
is for a different time at a podcast that doesn't exist. So
hey, look, we mentioned a bunch of the sports that we're going to talk about today already in this bit. We'll eventually talk about hockey. We'll talk a lot about baseball. We're going to talk about another stickball sport and softball. We have two brands of basketball to talk about today. It's going to be a jam-packed show. So let's start on the baseball diamond at Russ Chandler Stadium, a weekend series versus Old Dominion to open the 2025 season. A 3-2 win on Friday, a 7-3 win in exciting fashion on Saturday, and a game in progress currently, which Tech is winning, last I checked, by 3 runs in the middle of the eighth inning. Let's start on Friday in what I'm sure was a very dramatic 3-2 victory. Jack, you were there
I
in
was.
person. Tell me about it.
It's just fun to be back at Russ Chandler as always. The people that worked for the team kind of noted it was one of the better attended home openers in a while, which was cool to see. The weather was also not that bad. Like it wasn't like fiercely cold or anything like that. So and it was sunny, so it was a good day to be there. Was it sunny? I don't remember if it was sunny. Anyways, but it was just the weirdest little game too. Like if you told any of us that we would win 3-2 with two sack bunts to score 2 runs to win a baseball game, you'd be like, "Who? That's not what we do." And sure enough, that's exactly what we did. And then we still did hit a homer.
Oh, hold on,
But
hold on. Time out.
yeah,
Danny Hall loves a sack bunt. I just want that to be put
Yeah,
out there.
Danny Hall do be
Danny
loving
Hall
them
loves a
sack
it
sack
bunts.
was.
bunt.
It was a very. We just don't find ourselves in the situation as like the way we win a game kind of thing because we
That
score
is
enough.
fair. It's not. It's
Yeah,
it's definitely not true to type. in
Yeah.
that
And
usually
that
it's a boom or bust kind of hitting performance,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Not a dink and dunk,
exactly.
but
This was extremely dinky and extremely dunky with the one home run, and then got just little hits there, little hits there. That's all we needed. The pitching was awesome. Tate McKee went 5 innings of unearned ball. Could have gone longer. Maybe I asked Danny Hall about that, and he's just like, it was just a good time to moving along, and they had a plan in place. And Carson Bauer did allow a run, but only a run before they put in Jalen Payton, who I want to make sure we highlight for a second here because this guy, we knew he was good. He did not pitch at all last year because of injury. He hasn't pitched since March of 2023, and he came in and threw 2 innings lights out ball with some just wicked stuff. They had nothing. He struck out 4 guys, 4 of the 6 batters he faced in the eighth and ninth innings. It was only up one in the ninth inning too. So it was awesome just hear him talk and just be in the room with him afterwards, just to like feel his energy coming off because like it had been a year plus in the making for him to get that outing back in there, and it was so good to see him do that. Uh, I did not watch the second game, but overall it was good. Of note, Nathan Wall kept up his multiple season on base streak alive. I don't know if he kept it alive in game two, but I know he got on
Oh, he
base
did.
today.
Oh, sorry. I was
He
gonna say
did.
I thought
He
you.
did.
He did today
Okay, I
because
don't know if he
he
did
had a
yesterday.
massive home run. Sorry, I thought I started talking before you got to where you were going, and
Well,
that's
let me
on
double.
me.
I've got the box score up here right now. Wall he did reach base yesterday. He got a walk, so he is now at 44. He's at 45 consecutive games that he has played that he has reached base, dating back to 23.
That's we take that.
you
Quite
definitely
literally in this
do.
case, we did
Yes,
take that
please take it. We'd love that.
All right, so
from Cornell. Yeah.
just to talk about the second game very fast. I want to set this up because the end. I checked the score of this game as the during the middle of the ninth inning yesterday before turning it on. And my instant reaction to seeing a 3-0 ODU lead was, I see we're back to our old ways. And then I turned it on to watch the bottom of the ninth. And ODU, with a 3-run lead, their closer does not get a single out.
Nope.
He walks, I think, at least 2 guys, including the tying run, and then he throws middle to the last guy you want to throw middle to, Drew Burris, with the bases loaded for 4 more. 7 unanswerable runs in the bottom of the ninth, including a walk-off grand slam.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yep. That's just what he. That was that. Hey, that's our old ways. Cardiac jackets. That's what we do. That is our old ways. That is our way. Sorry, that is just the way. This is the way.
Yeah, I
The
mean, to
way
be fair, I think limiting the damage to 3 and when you're not having a good day on the mound is an improvement, right?
Right.
I
Yep.
think in previous years, and I think Ben said this really well talking about last year's performances too. He said that they threw slow and allowed homers, and now this year is an adjustment, right? They have a little bit more control and they're showing off some of that top end speed as well. So
Yep.
I think obviously very small sample size, extremely small sample size.
Yes.
But I think there is a level of like outcome adjustment that you're seeing at the top level.
Yeah, like the coaching
Yeah.
can matter a lot at this stage. Still, these are very still influential kids, just still figuring out how good they're going to be or what their stuff is, or adding pitches. And so this is still a very trainable time to lock them into certain ways of how to play. And I did notice that like the wild pitches were not really a thing we were doing. That didn't seem like we were like fully losing control of at bats or anything on the mound. It was a much better looking, just cohesive performances on the mound. Not granted, we only allow 5 runs in 2 combined games, which is fantastic. In fact, that's fantastic for any college team, with how random things can get. So, yeah, early returns are today's game hasn't been necessarily the Old Dominion hasn't been crazy with the bats there either. So like early returns is like okay,
Well,
at
knock on
least
some wood, buddy.
ear
There's still a top of the ninth
there's
inning to play
early return.
here.
Hey, I'm taking this out of 26 to 27 innings pitched. So far, not that or not yeah 26 to 27. So it's not this is what you want to see if you're for now.
A couple other notes before we get into talking about ODU a little bit, and just in terms of adjusting our expectations here. John Giesler, I don't think has appeared in a single game this
Yeah, he's hurt.
weekend.
Yeah.
There was some indication of that in the final presser before Friday's game from Danny Hall. I think there was a lot of emphasis on Mr. Hernandez
Hmm.
and the role
Yeah.
that he was going to play this weekend. And I mean, he's been playing two ways today, as in he just popped out to end the eighth inning and is now back on the mound. So.
Amazing.
That is something to monitor as well. I don't know if we got a prognosis or if Danny mentioned anything
He did not know.
other than that, Hernandez was going to be playing.
Yeah, and hey, Hernandez had a big double in that first game to set up the third run in that game, so he's been huge. Yeah, ACC rules. We don't have to say anything about injuries ever, so we'll find out when they start playing again, basically.
Yeah. Speaking and doubling back to ODU, we've talked a little bit up here about how good these pitching performances have been, especially relative to the level of the past couple of years.
Hmm.
This is kind of for both of you, as someone that is more of a college baseball, or I don't know a ton of these teams as well as I used to, let's say. What kind of level are we looking at for ODU, a comparable level?
I mean, they're a solid mid-major team. I think it feels like a couple of their guys had like games of their lives against us. So, there's something to be said about that. I don't know if that means that they're, positioned a la maybe how we thought North Florida would have a year this year in men's hoops, or if it's more of a, they're just generally competent, I guess.
Danny
And
did
having a
note.
good day.
Yeah,
But
Danny did note in the first game that I forgot the guys who started the game, the first game, but he was very he praised that guy a lot for how well he pitched in that first game. So it was definitely not a we just couldn't hit. It was a hey, you're running into good pitchers. You do what you can against good pitchers.
Well, and to that point, I think the at the end of the day, like it's a solid team from a solid league that's playing kind of their guts out in a good
Yep.
opener. Not a lot of tape, not a lot of, there's considering the circumstances, I'm pretty pleased with how things have gone so far, is how I put it.
Sounds good to me. I'm sure we'll have an update later in this episode when this game goes final as we keep tracking it. But just to talk about the schedule ahead for Georgia Tech baseball, they will head down to Statesboro on Tuesday. That is a 6 p.m. first pitch on ESPN Plus. The weekend series, your Friday, Saturday, Sunday action is versus Marshall. And then there's also weirdly a Monday game versus Marshall. That is a 4 p.m. first pitch on Friday, a 2 p.m. first pitch on Saturday, and then Sunday and Monday are both 1 p.m.s, all on ACC Network Extra. Let's head over to softball, who is in Starkville, Mississippi this weekend for the Snowball Tournament. This cannot be a real name. Please tell me this
Snow,
is a
snow,
A snowman
snowman.
tournament. I
Yeah,
mistyped it.
it's still snow.
it's
Yeah.
weird weather. It's been a weird weather year thus far in the United States. And 12-8 win over Southern Illinois to kick off the weekend. A 15-1 dismantling of Bradley. A 4-3 win over Bradley in the second leg of that tie. And then unfortunately a 6-4 loss versus North Texas in the first of today's games. An earlier midweek game versus Kennesaw State, I think, was canceled due to weather this week. So, I mean, high scoring, high leverage moments here, and just, out of the two, pretty good teams that they're going to play, they have Mississippi State yet to play later today. I think that game is about to start
It has been going.
soon. Oh, it's been going. Okay. Oh, yeah, that was a 3 p.m. first pitch,
Yep,
if I remember
yep.
correctly. But yeah, potentially could get a split out of those last two games. Jake, is our resident softball expert. What do you make of this tournament performance from Tech thus far?
Yeah, Southern Illinois, I would kind of group in a similar boat as EKU last week. I think we mentioned this in the season preview, so I won't belabor any points. That's a good win. 12-8, kind of the first time we've seen our bats come alive, and then following that up with a 15-1 win over Bradley. That's a team you just have to beat, is how I would describe that. So yeah, a great first day. Obviously, kind of, uh, you'd like to see that offensive performance continue into Saturday. So 4-3 is maybe a little bit tighter than you like, but good teams come back and win. So can't complain too much about that. Yeah, I think my upshot is the first 2 days were pretty good. Um, I think you'd probably like to see a win over North Texas, but they're generally not a terrible team, and Mississippi State's a top 20 team in the country. So I don't know. It's 6-2 right now in Starkville. I'm not terribly uh, optimistic just knowing how good Mississippi State is. But we've got some hits. We've got some action in there. It just takes a couple big swings. So I'm not going to say that Tech's out of it either. So
Big thing from that first Bradley game was that was a complete game for Emma Mangini in the circle. That was her first one of her career. She's pitched all that would end up being a fun five inning mercy rule. Only allowed 4 hits. We did have a error, but I mean, to have an additional arm, none of us expected to have to be there. That's good to see because we're gonna. I mean, Lord knows we're gonna need arms. So that's
yep.
I think it's the big things that sticks out right now outside of just the bats finally just doing their thing. Because we knew they could hit. They hit really well last year. The coaching's there for that kind of thing. So, trying to see if how many people went yard, if anyone went yard, or if we're not a home run team. Oh, Emma Simon hit a home run. All right, cool. There we go.
Just to take a look at this game in action right now versus Mississippi State, has not been a great day on the mound. Three pitchers have played. They've allowed a combined, obviously, the 6 runs off of 4 hits. All 3 runs have been earned. 5 walks and
That's not
only
good.
1 strikeout on the board. So not
Don't
ideal.
don't walk
Not
people.
ideal.
Not
Yeah,
much else there.
not ideal.
Not ideal. For real-time follow-up, by the way, that Old Dominion Georgia Tech baseball game has gone final. That is a 7-4
Hey,
victory for Georgia Tech.
bring out the brooms.
Alex Hernandez, who we talked about earlier, playing both ways, got the save. Caden Campbell got the win. So that's nice. But back to softball. I, have these performances shifted in your minds anything that we said before the season? Obviously, it's only 2 weekends in. Is there anything that you see as new concerns or new points of strength for this team? And Jake, I want to go to you first.
I'm going to take listeners behind the curtain a little bit. This is actually take two of this comment because I completely switched back into baseball mode, and I'm going to double down and mention that we had to do that because I honestly am in a really similar spot with both teams. I think that in terms of what we've seen from softball this weekend, I think that if we can get quality pitching appearances up and down a lineup, a wider lineup than we've seen in the past. I think that's good. You got to take advantage against teams that are quote unquote below you in standings. I think they did that over Bradley, and I think they punched up and got a good win over a really quality program in an SIU Salukis team there. I think that those are both really encouraging. I think North Texas, with as generally solid as they've been, just kind of seeing their numbers year in year out, not too worried about that. Obviously, you want to walk away with a win, but if anything, it kind of reinforces what I was feeling. And seeing big crooked numbers, I think, is something that we've been waiting to see, or at least coming out of Buzz Classic. It's only been a week, but I've been waiting to see there. So good to see the bats come to life there. But obviously, maybe a showing with 3-2 is a little bit lesser than a 4-1. But hey, that's the rub, right?
Yeah, and it's it's interesting how we get these sports that have paired narratives constantly, right? We were talking about men's and women's basketball in the same space a lot last year.
Mm.
We're talking about baseball and softball in the same space this year. There's one more pairing that we had last year that I can't put my finger on, and it's really bothering me to really sell this point. But we do keep having these similar themes come up with, oh, tennis. Yeah, tennis. Both tennis teams, and we'll talk about them in a little bit after the break. Um, like they're in the same spot this year, and they were in a similar spot last year too. So it's just some of these narratives just keep appearing and keep being paired together. It's very interesting. Going back to softball very quickly, talking about their fixture list. Wednesday, they'll be down at Troy. That's a 6 p.m. first pitch. Is that on TV? I assume that's like an ESPN Plus situation.
I don't.
I didn't
I don't.
see it when I was looking through the schedule, but
These games
Jack,
tend to
did
not
you?
be. No, I do not. These
Okay.
games, these road not at power schools. It's not often we get to see these games televised. So yeah, I'm guessing no.
Yeah.
Just put a camera in center field, please. It's
Or bring
2025.
somebody
Just
with a podcast stream and have them ramble about what they're seeing, you know.
Jack would 100% go out there is the thing.
I would do this if I didn't have to be in the office that day. So
But at the weekend is the I-75 tournament. Your opponents, or Tech's opponents at the weekend, number 24 Kentucky, Coastal Carolina, and Dayton. And the order of fixtures for that, they'll play Kentucky and then Coastal Carolina on Friday in a doubleheader. They'll do the same thing again on Saturday, and then the doubleheader versus Dayton on Sunday. All games, excuse me, on ACC Network Extra. Gentlemen, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the paired narratives of both basketball teams and both tennis teams, and a little bit of swim and dive back in a
Well,
tick.
a lot of bit of swim and dive if I have anything to say about it. But in the meantime, section 103.com. This podcast is brought to you by Section 103. That is the best place to get your Georgia Tech apparel. Of course, as always, you can find, hats. That's new, but you can find hats there. You can also find coach hoodies, things like that. But the thing I want to talk today about is the transfer portal protection program. It is the off season for football, and we are not in roster move season for basketball. But just want to remind you, go ahead, buy that shirt, support our student athletes, and if that player does transfer to another school, you're eligible for 30% off a player T-shirt of a current student athlete. So keep that in mind there as well for when you're going to support Georgia Tech. Shipping will resume on the 24th. And in the meantime, you can still place your orders. Code FTRS gets you 10% off. And as always, free shipping over $80. Section 103.com and at section 103 on the socials. Jack, Akshay, back to you guys.
Gentlemen, let's talk about the number 19 women's basketball program in the country, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. That number 19 team in the country did not start the week off so hot with a very, very strange 7-point loss at Clemson, but a good rebound win today versus Wake Forest, a 73-62 win. Jake, I feel like for years we've had one cardinal rule about women's basketball, and that has been don't lose to Clemson. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so. They're never really all that good, so don't lose to them. I feel the same way in volleyball too.
hmm
So yeah, don't lose to Clemson, but we lost to Clemson. And dare I say, kind of came close last year in at least one or two of the games. So maybe this time, maybe it's time for this rule of thumb to end, or maybe we just need to win these winnable games. Your mileage may vary. Jack, Akshay.
They do play us close to women's basketball more often. Like it's not automatic blowouts every time, like it should be, like it should have been today. Um, or against other teams that we haven't blown out. But nonetheless, like this was just a bad shooting day overall. They shot 34%. They allowed 50% to Clemson, which is kind of a tale that's been happening between today and Wake Forest. Was that teams were able to shoot well against us, uh, and not and shoot efficiently at that as well in both these games. We attempted 67 shots against Clemson. Clemson only shot 52 times, and made three more buckets. So that's not liking that. We've been good on our steals. We had 7 against Clemson, 15 today against Wake Forest, which I like. That we're generally winning turnover battles, which is good. The points off turnovers we're not always winning though either, or at least not winning by the proportionate amount compared to how many turnovers we get. So that hasn't been great. But we were not. We only led in this game for 5 minutes. We only had a 2 possession lead at most. Clemson got it to 15 in the third quarter. So, uh, and we had that lead at the beginning of the game. Like after Clemson took over, that was it. So, uh, it has that part's not great. I mean, we need the consistency is better than I think it was because this is a more mature team. Deja Thomas Harris came back, which is good to see after she'd been injured a lot. But Danny Carnegie only 2 of 9. Rosa Augusta 19 only 0 of 4. Chit Chat right, 2 of 13. Like that. Kara Dunn, of course, is awesome again. 6 of 14, gets 18 points, and has a couple steals, but she can't single handedly do all this herself. Uh, and this and so and what Tony only had 11 points in this game too, and only had how many assists? Had six assists. Good for her. So ultimately, yeah, just bad night kind of thing. Like teams in the ACC, like the SMU game. Eventually, SMU was kind of due for a good one, and we just barely, by the grace of God, snuck through at that one. Wake Forest played us hard today, but in the end, we were much more cohesive and weren't turning. Again, we're not turning the ball over, except he was even more extreme today against Wake Forest, where we won by 11. So, uh, I think in general you are going to have an ACC play. You're going to have just some random losses that are just going to
Yep.
happen. You have to
Yep.
be good enough to get out of those situations more often than not. We are getting out of more of those than we used to. I think the SMU game is emblematic of that, and this Wake Forest game is also kind of emblematic of that because we have had late games against Wake Forest in the season that have just been like, what the hell is going on here? And we either barely win or we just inexplicably lose. And this today was we were losing in the fourth quarter, but then just turned on the Jets and that was it. And we just put them away. We stopped them and put them away, which is we've seen and they've done this against other teams this year. So they are still, I think, one of the best teams in the country. They know that. Cara Dunn mentioned today that like they know they have different lineups that they can do different things in. Well, they just still got to put it all really, really put it all together to make themselves a lethal threat, like we saw them do at the beginning of the year against some lesser quality opponents, of course. But yeah, and now they're going to play two ranked teams in a row, and we may not even be ranked after this week after losing to Clemson and not beating Wake Forest by enough, I would say. So if we're coming out at like the 26th or we're just receiving votes next week, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
It's funny that we have our, our usual take about not losing to Clemson because if I look at the Bart Torvik rankings, the women's basketball rankings right now, they are 60th in those
Yeah,
rankings.
this is a much better Clemson team than
Yeah,
past years. I
yeah.
think we generally say that pretty tongue in cheek, but
Yeah. And looking down the schedule, this is the four game slate that we said would kind of determine where that seeding and how, really be emblematic of the season. Your NC State, Florida State, Cal, and Stanford. That's at home versus NC State and Florida State, and then at Cal and
Yeah.
at Stanford. That Cal team, by the way, is no slouch.
No joke at all. No joke at all.
Stanford. I think we've or I have been bludgeoned to death with the idea that Stanford has taken a big step back this year. I've had to eat some crow on that in my personal takes, so I will. But yeah, that ends those first three games. No joke at all. It's weird to see the win, like the ex win probabilities or the win expectancies on these on the Torvik site.
Yeah.
61% versus NC State, 68% versus Florida State, 50-50 versus Cal, by the way, and then 70% versus Stanford. Basically, Bart Torvik expects Tech, excuse me, to go 2-2 in their final four games of the season. I put forward earlier today that, especially while this Wake game was weirdly close, I think it was nearly tied at one point.
Oh yeah, we were losing in the fourth quarter. We were down
yeah,
by one for about 4 seconds before Danny Carnegie put in a quick bucket. But it did get to the point where they had gone on two pretty consistent runs, and we just were not
yep,
matching them well enough, and they eventually took the lead. And then that is the moment you can start the clock where we just shut them down.
Yeah, and
yep.
if you look at
And
the
and it was like they just kept it that arm's length, and
Yep.
the game finished in double figures. I also don't know if Wake's is quote unquote bad as their record, which is a really silly
They have
sports
won one
ism,
ACC game. They've won one ACC
but
game all year.
yeah,
93 in Torvik for Wake. So
Yeah.
not, I mean, they're middle of
No,
the
they played
road.
well. They played well. They played well. Like that was not like they shot well. Our defense had some issues. Again, they had
yeah,
a big setter who caused problems for us. And Hines was her name, and so like that same pattern again was kind of sort of beating us. But you got to have a little bit more if you're going to beat us in that regard. Also, I just checked the Torvik for Clemson. They actually have been on a really good run as of late. They had posted three straight 90 plus game scores, including against Duke and North Carolina. So they were playing
They
well
were
coming into
due.
that game.
yep,
It's interesting because if you look at the game score chart for Tech, obviously rattling off not a single game score under like 95 to start the year. I think that's what we were talking about for a long time.
Yeah, it took them
Uh,
until it took them until they that first loss against Louisville. or
Yeah.
after the second loss of the year to get set below
Yeah.
96.
And then they take those two really frustrating losses,
Yep.
like you said, to VT and then to Louisville, in which they play well below their level. And then even while those like the next couple games have still been at those like a fairly high level, fairly high game scores, you have a stinker versus SMU,
Yeah.
and then a stinker versus Clemson, and that's just dragging the whole trend line really far down in terms of slope. So I put in a take in our writers room earlier that right around that time when Tech was down, that was like this feels a little like last year where inexplicably the performances started to dip, but I'm willing to take that back or wind
Eh,
that back a little
It's
bit just
well,
based on looking
yeah.
at this chart.
I'll give you this. They SMU game, not good. Like how like that is probably 8 times out of 10 with how that game played out and just how ball bounce funny or whatever. We probably lose that game 8 times out of 10. Like we got incredibly lucky at the very end to not go be in overtime or to be outright losing. Um, the games we have lost otherwise, let's see here, like at Clemson, they shot well from three. When Louisville beat us, or when Virginia Tech beat us, they shot incredibly well from three. So that's been a thing that can hurt us a lot. Is like just if we're not matching that, it sucks. When we lost to Duke, we shot 1 of 20 in a 5 point loss. Literally, just like we just shoot that game normally, we probably beat Duke at home somehow. Uh, so there's been overall like the consistency is so much better than it used to be. So much better. It's not perfect. But the people are there and we're getting people back. A big note today: Inez Nogueira started for the first time in like over a month today. Nell did explain in the presser that basically she's just been on rest management, on load management. Like she was super beat up, just like needed time to get back to full strength, and they knew they were going to need her specifically at this time of year. So Kayla started today as well. So I think there is kind of an intentional veer back towards the older folks in these really important games we're about to have, that we are still in play to get the fourth seed in the ACC tournament, which would be the double bye. Like we're not mathematically out of that, and beating Florida State and North Carolina State would go a long way towards that. Um, so it while it seems odd here, I think this was, I'm not gonna say it was a manufactured rut or anything like that, but like they know how to get out of this and they're steering out of it actively right now. So how we play against North Carolina State, even if we don't win, like as long as it's like okay, what we need to see from what they want to do is happening, I think there is a right kind of turn happening. Um, Also, what Kara Dunn also mentioned that like for the freshmen playing on the road in ACC context is kind of a new experience for them. Like that is a new learning curve and how to play in those kind of environments. So, and they've gotten some good ones. They're gonna have some damn good ones at Cal and Stanford too. So, uh, that'll be like we have to win one of these games at home coming up to like feel good. I would say. Stanford, I think we should be able to win, but then again, it's gonna be a weird travel situation at that.
Just a note on, I guess, the overarching look at this team. They've already tied, at least in the Torvik era. I don't have 2020 to compare to, but they have tied Nell Fortner's win record
They have,
from
yes. That
from
was
2022. I did the math very quickly on the COVID year because they went 17-9 in that year and made it to the Sweet 16. They are outpacing that team as well, in terms of wins. Let me double check that
and that
ACC
21st,
record.
yeah, and that 21st win a couple of years ago came in the ACC tournament as well. So, and we've
Yep.
got this with with 4 games to spare in the season. So that's a big deal. Oh, sorry, not 4 games. 4 games? 5 games. No, 4 games. Yeah, 4 games to spare. So
Yeah.
that's big, and hopefully, because we're gonna be a plus seed in in the ACC tournament, you'd hope you get at least one more out of this. So, yeah, like this season could get to 25, 26 wins if things really start going right.
If they go 3-1 in the last 4 games, they will tie Neil Fortner's 2021 team for ACC record
Nice.
as well. If they go 2-2, they will tie 2020. They will basically tie the 2022 team. So that's
Big,
interesting.
huge.
Very, very interesting considering where both of those teams have landed, one in the round of 64 and then the other one in the Sweet 16. I have not checked the latest tournament projections.
Well, they did release the top the committee did their top 16 today, so like the actual like selection committee, and obviously we were not in that top 16, but we've generally been stuck in like a 5 seed somewhere else for the most part the rest of the way. That's
That's fine.
we've held there for a while.
I think our mental model of this season has basically been we'll probably get slotted, or Tech will probably get slotted in like in they will host that first round and or I guess they wouldn't host those first two
No, they
rounds,
were
but
not. No.
they'll feed into the Sweet 16 of like a South Carolina or a UCLA or someone that's very, very good, and that
Yeah.
kind of defines the
Yeah.
entire season, like it did before. I mean, it's still a fairly top heavy sport, right?
It
Like the
is. Yeah.
top 16 teams, there's still a rank above everyone else. So,
Yeah. You hope you don't get slotted into a like if we can get into a place where we're visiting a 10 to 14 team instead of a 1 to 14, that completely changes our outlook to get out of the first weekend of the bracket. Also, I'm just looking at the player stats. Cara Dunn's shooting 62% from 2-point range. Good lord, she's so freaking good.
pretty good. Pretty good. Again, those next two fixtures for women's basketball: Thursday versus number 10 NC State. That is a 7 p.m. tip on ACC Network Extra. I think that should be an ACC Network game, but that's besides the point. And then Sunday, they'll play number 23 Florida State. That'll be a 4 p.m. tip on the CW. Let's flip over and talk about the men's team. A 2-0 week for them versus the West Coast schools, a 60-52 win over Stanford, and then a very, very strange, very, very wacky 90-88 overtime win versus Cal Berkeley. This one went down to the literal wire, as in the Bayan Dongo put put that game-winning bucket in as time expired. That whole offensive sequence is not my favorite. We can talk about that as well, but let's talk about the Stanford game very quickly. Stanford, if you're not familiar with where Stanford is at a program, they fired Jared Haas, after the end of last season. They hired, I think, the head coach from Washington State. Um, Ironically, they lost Peja Stojakovic's kid to Cal after he played his first season at Stanford, but they have this like very good 7-1 French basketball prospect on the roster that it apparently in this game Tech absolutely shut down. I was very shocked to read that.
Yeah.
Anyone have more want to color in the lines here a bit on Stanford versus Tech?
I sadly did not get to watch this game, but I've caught Robert Pence's recap from this game. Neither of Lance Terry or Javian McCollum were playing in this game, which if you told me that, especially with Lance Terry, I would have expected we barely would get to 50 points. But yeah, Ndongo was turning into the Ndongo I think we thought we were going to get this year, especially.
Yep.
I think the Cal game is emblematic of that as well. Uh, like right, Mustaf Darian's son started this game, played 33 minutes. He only had 2 points, but like he had to play a lot of minutes that he usually is probably not supposed to get. Mutombo played 3 minutes. Mustaf, like we played seven. We basically just played six guys this entire game. Duncan Powell and Nate George played all the minutes because they have to. George scored 22 on 7 and 13 shooting. Like the guys that need to step up and what very well would be understandably a bad moment if you can only play seven guys because that's all you got. Uh, they're they're just digging in. I think the mental switch we've been wanting to see from this team has very clearly happened.
Yep.
I think that was a worry last year. It's just like, dang, can just put it together, like put the effort in. Come on, guys. And now it's like, oh, well, shoot, they bought in. Well, whatever Damon has put in there for them, they have bought into now. Um, this is something I was kind of curious about, knowing that he came from the Ime Udoka version of not Ime. Was it Ime? No, the guy who was after Ime Udoka, who's the Celtics' current head coach, who was just
The
like,
guy who just watches the town constantly.
yes, that guy. I mentioned this on the pod, so go back to a random episode. I talk about it, but just like how like it took them a little bit longer for them to buy into what they were doing, and once they bought in, the Celtics were just unstoppable. And I was like, okay, Damon's seen this happen, and it was a very similar message that the Celtics were getting. So I was wondering, like, okay, at some point this shift's gonna have to happen, and this might be when it's happening. Finally, is like they get it. They finally get what how this is going to work. And I guess
I was going to say, I'm sure there's some health aspect to that too, you
sure,
know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, but also like playing if you're gonna play only with the same six guys for this long,
Yeah.
you're gonna create chemistry. Like obviously that's gonna happen too. Now it's wild. Now, you don't want to do this at this time of year because you want guys to be healthy for later in the season. There's not much later left to go, but it's still like this is how you get injuries and stuff like that.
Well,
But
and it belies in some of these box scores too. I mean, Tech beat the brakes off of Stanford in the first half. And
right,
then, kind of coming down that backstretch, it was a lot tighter and it was dicey there for a little bit. But
yeah,
then again,
it's
numbers
awesome
might tell you that.
yeah,
Oh,
it's
go
awesome to
ahead.
have a 15-point lead at half, just in general,
Yeah.
to be able to get to be in that position though, to be like, okay,
Yeah.
just one more good stretch here, and we've got this game pretty much put away, and they did that. There was apparently 27 scouts in attendance for Maxime right now, who plays for Stanford, who's 7-1. He only had
Yeah,
eight points
that's
on
the
four or
7-1
13.
French prospect
Yeah,
guy.
he was eight points on 4 or 13 shooting and only 6 rebounds. That's crazy. That's talk about by the Dongo doing his job. Holy cow, that's impressive. That is impressive. We led by as much as 20 in this game. Love it. And
And
that was
also,
Darian Sutton's first start.
speaking of that second half swoon, that just like the fitness thing too, like the same thing happened versus Cal, right? They had a pretty solid lead versus Cal heading into the second half, and then Cal decided to go and shoot 50% from three for the game. Uh
Jesus.
and and I forget Stojakovic's kid's first name, but he decided to go supernova in that second half. He's very good. He's very, very good. And
Andre
Tech,
Stojakovic.
Andrei Stojakovic, thank you. He's very, very good. And Tech did not entirely have an answer for him at times. And so this game took a very long and winding road with some television Theodore inspired antics here and
Right.
there.
Let
Yeah.
I'll read this from Robert's recap or like highlight from his recap. In this game, Cal had had a freshman Jeremiah Wilkinson had 25 points. Stojakovic had 22. They had a season high 13 threes, and Manny Sissoko had a double double with 10 points and 11 rebounds. I would have never. This is a game I would say, okay, that's if you read me that, I know we lost. That is, I know we lost
Yeah.
already if that's the paragraph you read me. And then we shot 11 of 20 from three, and our 500.
It's been
Basketball's weird.
I did not look when you set the schedule out and also like laid out a bunch of these losses early on in the season. It was I'm not gonna sit here and say that I expected this team to be 500 with
No,
5 games remaining
we still
by
have
any
sub
stretch.
500 in ACC play. We're still 7-8 in the conference play, but I mean that's squarely into we're playing in the ACC tournament though. Like we're out of the we're not gonna miss the tournament now.
Yeah, I want to just flag that because Cal was right right around us too. These last couple of days have been very good for putting some separation between Tech and I mean, well, beat Boston College next Saturday and then I'll feel really really good.
Mm-hmm.
But as of now, I mean, shoot, Tech's got wins over Clemson and Louisville and Stanford above them, and they're sitting in eighth. That's not a bad place to be. I mean, obviously there's maybe some games we'd like to have back, but in terms of just like general positioning, not bad. Not
Yeah.
bad.
And the rest of the slate going looking down. That's Boston College later this week. We'll talk about that in a bit. Um, Pittsburgh, who is somehow good at basketball now, surprise to me. NC State and Miami back to back, which are right in the same
Oh, you got to
Bar
win those.
Torvik ranking zone that we are, and then ending the season at Wake Forest. The two games that you're looking for here, obviously, are Pitt and Wake Forest, which are combined
Yep.
right around one win above bubble. Um, so that's what you're looking for. Get one of those, and you're looking at going maybe 500 or better on the year. I guess it's a 31 game slate, so hopefully over 500. Um, and it's
Yeah.
going to be a close shave probably for going to 500 in ACC play, which Tech does not generally do, at least as long as we have been fans.
So
But it's possible. right? It's entirely possible. So
They
this is
might
like you're playing for seeding here. You're playing for ACC tournament seeding. You get lucky, you get a couple wins in the tournament.
guess how
It's
many guess how many
possible.
wins or guess how many teams right now have a positive conference record in the ACC.
Oh, I was
Like
just looking at this. I
like
closed the window.
three.
Conference record, not overall record. Conference record.
Yeah, like three.
Yeah, it's seven. It's seven.
Oh, it's
It's seven.
seven. Oh, okay.
This conference
Wow.
is too big to have only three teams in an 18 team conference have
I was
a
gonna
positive
say
win rate.
you'd expect it to be like somewhere between 10 and 8, right? Like I
Right.
don't know.
Not seven. Yeah, and we're one game away from at least getting it to eight teams at 500 or better. But yeah, Miami 2 wins, Boston College 2 wins, NC State 3, Cuse and Cal with 5, Cuse, Cal, Notre Dame all with 5, and then four teams with 6 wins. No,
Man, I
five
look up and
teams.
down
Wait,
this
four. Yeah,
schedule.
it's
I look up
it's
and down this
yeah.
schedule and I'm like, shoot, I'd like to have that Syracuse game back. Shoot, I'd like to have that Notre Dame game back.
Right.
But
It's just how it's played out. Yeah, like yeah, that Clemson win. Wait, we beat Clemson. This team beat Clemson, right? I'm not making that up. Yeah, no, we did. We
yeah,
lost that. That
triple
was that.
overtime. It was
That's
that
right. That was the
ludicrous
game I
game.
was asleep for. That's right. That's right. That's why I'm forgetting because I don't
Don't
remember.
blame you.
So they can do it, man. They at least it's a team we can believe in. That's I think the biggest point at this point here is like, okay, this is something we can cheer for and be like, we like watching this, which has not been the case with every single Damon game thus far. I think it was something we were
Oh,
kind of worried
let's be
about the middle of the
clear.
year.
Let's be clear. It's still not great to watch, right? Like I
It's not
talked about
amazing.
that. I talked about that game-winning sequence, which I am shocked that it was game-winning because it went super. You have Nate George drive to the basket, basically put up like an errant shot to try to win the game on that sequence, and gets very lucky that it bounces right to Bayandongo, who tips it back into the
Hey,
bucket.
whatever gets it done. Like they're doing the things that make them a likable team, and
Which is fine.
they need that. They need that.
I think to your point, like that, just because they have to play seven guys, it leads to that level of consistency. It sets a floor, right? It
Yep.
sets a
Yep.
floor just based on that consistency. Um, and to your point, like you see that they're grinding out some of these results and they're gritty, right? Like obviously I'm the analytics guy, right? But like a lot of this stuff is not analytics. Like there is like a certain level of these
They play
guys are going
hard.
to fight for each other because they are playing upwards of 40 minutes a night because they have to,
Yep.
right? And so that paired with fitness concerns, paired with setting that floor and having to play, like all these factors are coming together and saying, okay, well, you've been dealt a particular hand of cards and you just need to make the most of that.
Right. They are. I
So
guess they're a team that likes to play with their backs against the wall. So
backs against the wall, one hand tied behind their back, and maybe one leg also tied behind them. It's a very weird situation of
they're
circumstance.
that guy from Monty Python who just keeps getting his limbs chopped off. He's like, I'm fine. Just a
It's a
chest
flesh
injury.
wound. It is a flesh wound. Next up for men's basketball, they'll go up to Boston College on next Saturday. That's a 2 p.m. start on ACC Network. Gentlemen, shall we talk a little tennis? Uh,
Yeah,
quick
I
note
could take this
on
one.
A quick note on the men before we get to the meat of the issue with women. They'll have a doubleheader on next Saturday. They were off this past weekend. UNC Wilmington and the Citadel will come to town next weekend. But Jake, tell us about women's tennis.
Yeah, so this one's kind of a heartbreaker, Jeds. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was about as
Aw.
close as it could have been. Tech went on the road to a very similar, very high quality Alabama women's tennis team last week. They lost 4-3. Um, it's a deep sigh moment because even though they did get a doubles point, they lost the other two courts 6-4 and 7-5. That's tough. On the singles side, they won all three of the top three courts. Scarlett Nicholson won in 2 sets, as did Alejandra Cruz and Kate Sharabura. Love to see that. That's good work at the top of the lineup. That said, Margot McQuay beat Light on 5, and Sarah Nair beat Judison on 6. That left Court four, Gibbon Roach did fight into a third set. It was the only singles match to go into a third set, but fell 6-3. It's about as close as you can come against a really similar team. I'd say that just given the high quality of competition that this team has seen, their record doesn't necessarily reflect the results so far. But yeah, quality overall, good on them, but tough showing.
Yeah, this is a heartbreaker for sure. Like,
Yeah,
especially if you're going to into extra points in the doubles and in a bunch of these courts, right? You have 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, even in the first sets of all three of those top three court singles matches, and then seven
two
six.
sets went to 7-6. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
7-6, yeah, on court four. The second set in on court five went 7-6. So that, like you said,
Yeah.
as close as possible. The
Yeah.
a lot just needed a little bit more magic in this one. Um, Talking about those
Yeah.
paired narratives earlier, by the way, the men's tennis team, 83rd in the Massey ranking, not ranked in ITA. The women's tennis
38th.
team,
30th.
38th,
38th.
sorry.
Yeah.
Eh, 38th in the Massey ranking and not ranked in the ITA. Women's tennis ranked in the ITA at number 25, but 34 in the Massey ranking. So like right alongside each other in terms of
Yep.
quality. You can't see this hand motion that I'm making because podcasting is a visual medium. Um, but yeah, is there? I think we're going to be talking a lot about these teams, and I mean, we talked about being in the same place, and I think we talked forever and ever and ever about men's tennis being in these situations where it was right there, right? They just needed that one marquee win to really set them up for the rest of the season. Hopefully, this isn't the same story with women's
Well,
tennis, right? Still a lot of
and
season left to play, and especially a lot of conference season left to play. But these are the types of ones that you want versus very similar teams.
well, and dare I say, women's tennis just has not had that like court one and I guess top singles shut down option in a couple of years now. I'd say even last Carol pretty good, but Paige Horrigan and Kenya Jones spent what 6 years, including a year or two where they overlapped as the option, a la a Eubanks when he played for the men, and they're really good, really solid, deep lineups, but just not the same kind of. If you get that one, that could be your surefire number one. It drops everyone else down a court, and you kind of, adjust from there. So I think that's probably the biggest difference from maybe the late 2010s women's tennis teams that we're seeing right now. But they'll start ACC play this week at Virginia Tech on Friday and at Virginia on Sunday. Would be great to start it off with a win for sure against Virginia Tech. That's a match you need at this point. So
Yeah. Good stuff. Hopefully, good stuff in that Virginia swing as well. Let's hop over to the pool. Let's talk about swim and dive as the ACC championships began this week at the Greensboro Aquatic Center, a place that
Mhm.
I'm sure Jim Boeheim, a city that Jim Boeheim surely loves
Oh,
for
it's the
sure.
same complex, man. The GAC. Yeah, that's at the Greensboro Coliseum. I'm sure he loves that place.
Yeah.
Truly, truly loves that place. I've heard there's like a good. Were we talking about this in Slack earlier? This is not related to the sport, but there's like a good barbecue place or something nearby. Someone was saying this. I remember this very specifically. Maybe we'll touch on this later at a different point. But it is ACC championship time for the men's and women's swim and dive teams. Weirdly enough, this news I don't know when this news dropped, but the Stanford women's team isn't staying the entire meet?
Yes.
Question mark?
Yes.
What's going
Yes.
on
It
here? Color in the
Right.
lines
So
for
I
me.
I can take this because Jake, I know you're about to like have 18,000 minutes of just
that's fair. Yeah, I
absolute
got a lot of
nerdery
words
here.
coming up.
Uh, so the ACC championship does not run the same as the NCAAs or how the Pac-12s used to run. The Pac-12s used to mirror the NCAA championships where they'd run the men and women separately and in the same meet order. ACC is smashed it all together. And basically, and the event order is different because you got men and women in the same pool. So what or same complex. So what they do this time, so basically what Stanford's doing is like we don't need them to be there all the entire time. We need them to rest because they know they got NCAAs coming up. If they don't need to be in the East Coast for 2 extra days, then why bother? So they're bringing them back. This meet starts Tuesday. They're going to leave after Friday prelims and bring their top swimmers back home to California, which I mean, knowing that ACCs are not their priority, like they want NCAA championships because they can get them, that makes sense. And if you don't want them to get out of an established rhythm, sure, yeah, do it.
I can't believe bowl
I
opt-outs have spread to swimming. This is
like
It
completely
sucks. I
ridiculous.
mean, this is a natural side effect of just the
so,
stupidity
but
of conference realignment, but like I get it
but
from their perspective.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. So the ACC used to split the men and the women. I'm old enough to remember. I think it was my freshman year. We hosted because it got kicked out of North Carolina for
Bathroom bill.
bathroom
Yeah,
bill reasons,
yeah.
and that was split weeks. But I think that was something that they've done before. I'm sure they wouldn't rent Georgia Tech's pool for an extra week if they didn't have
Yeah.
to, or
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. It's just not a cheap thing to do that. I'm sure they save a little bit of money by getting the facility for just a week, but it
Oh,
makes a
probably. Yeah.
better TV product. And the athletes that you hear, there's a better vibe because there are more
Yeah.
fans in the building. There are more eyeballs on ACC Network Extra watching it, and they're their teammates that are there too, yelling and screaming. I mean,
Yeah.
that's for a lot of them, this is the biggest meet you're going to get. And I don't mean to be like, oh, well, and Stanford's just going to be competing for titles, but to tip my cards here a little bit in terms of what we're going to be talking about a little bit more here. 8 of the 15 ACC women's teams are ranked in the top 25. 10 of the, I think another 15, but Miami and Notre Dame are weird cases. So 10 of the 13 ACC men's teams are ranked in the top 25. This is not some joke of a meet. And there's four
Yeah.
weeks until NCAAs. I don't know. I think it's weird. I think
And Cal's. I mean, Cal's
it's
not doing it. They're staying the whole time, as far as we know.
no,
So yeah.
but as far as we know, and I don't know. It if it was, hey, we want them back in school for a couple of days, or hey, there's not enough time to get back, or that kind of thing. I just I just don't get it. It almost if and this is maybe me projecting as somebody who was not a high tier swimmer, but like if they took the 3 or 4 best, because they're not taking the whole team back, they're just taking the people already with A cuts, and we can get
Yeah.
into the weirdness as we do every year of what an A cut for a B cut is. To say like, oh no, they're so good that they're not going to be with you for the rest of this competition. It's like Cam Ward opting out in the middle of the Pop Tarts Bowl. That's the best way I can put it. It's it's
Well,
weird. It's
well,
weird.
yeah. Well, in this case, I mean, the big difference here though is that the big prize is still ahead. Like for Cam Ward, like that was it. Like it was just the Pop Tarts
Yeah,
Bowl.
because Miami is
Yeah, in a
terrible.
month.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a month away.
Sure. I mean,
I don't know.
I get your point, but like, I mean, we both swam. We know there's some importance to rest and sleep and all that kind of stuff, and like not wanting to throw your rhythm off. Granted, 4 weeks is 4 weeks. That's time, but at the same time, I totally get the idea of like, yeah, we don't want them flying like having like a 10-hour travel day on a Sunday to get back home in time for Monday classes and stuff like that, and
And
just
I'll add
have a
too.
compressed travel schedule.
I wonder, I mean, part of this, and depends on if you believe that jet lag with domestic travel is real or not, but there's obviously that 3 hour time difference, right? So it's you're here for a week. I assume this is me projecting because I have no idea how the travel schedule for this works, but I assume they fly in at the beginning of the week for ACCs.
Sunday or
They
Monday, yeah.
stay the full week, so they get acclimated. They stay the full week. They swim a couple. Obviously, they get acclimated to the time zone during the ACC tournament or the ACC championships, and then they get unacclimated to it as soon as they swim back. So you're basically talking about their training schedule, let's say, is affected by jet lag for those 2 weeks, right? So they're saying, okay, well, we don't want to burn 2 weeks of prep for the NCAA championships by being affected by travel and jet lag and those sorts of factors and an extra competition, right? Which I
And I'm going to put out a personal experience. Obviously, not still swimming at a medium or even low level, but in terms of just traveling, I go to Chicago a lot for personal and work reasons. That is one time zone away. That is not something you'd think you would get jet lag from. But I feel it even doing that. Your body is on a rhythm. And even if you're changing it by an hour, you do feel that difference. Quite frankly, I'm astonished that it wouldn't be more worthwhile to say, okay, you're in a rhythm for a full week, and then boom, okay, you're going back, rather than okay, your body has learned this 3 hour difference, and now it's going to have to retrain itself right off the bat. I don't know. It's that, like I said, it just plays into that. It's weird. I get it. Travel's a lot, and travel as an athlete is a lot too. So
Yeah.
there's certainly valid reasons to do it. It's just, man, I
It sucks that it
saying the
sucks that it's
quiet part
coming to
out
this
loud.
though.
These
Yeah.
these girls are their priority, and not the getting the team a dub because they were at least competitive for it. We can talk about the math behind that in just a sec, but UVA is going to run away with this women's title now, unless
Yeah.
something
But you mean the
truly
U you mean
truly
the
insane
US you mean
happens.
the US national team is going to run away with this title?
True, true.
Yeah.
So I guess
Also,
that's
coloring the
our
lines here a little bit.
yeah.
Coloring the lines here a little bit. The actual NCAA championships, like you said, they're 4 weeks away. They're 4 weeks after the ACC championship. Keep wanting to say ACC tournament. It's not a tournament. But the NCAA championships are in the state of Washington on Federal Way, which I assume is next to Seattle. Um,
Yes, very
but
large pool north of the city.
yeah, so you're just talking about them optimizing their chances of success in that tournament by staying in the same time zone, not having to recover from travel, um, and really and they're first up, right? They're 19 through the 22nd. They're the first championships up, and then the men follow them the 26th through the 29th. So I there is a I can squint and understand it. I think I'm with both of you in that it's just very weird, right? It's very
Yeah.
unusual. It's very weird, and maybe you don't have to squint too hard to make it not make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Jake,
Also,
how
I,
many
I lied. It's south of Seattle, north of Tacoma. But Jack, what's your question?
how many points are we going to score?
So that's a great question. I digitized the psych sheets, which was longer than I expected, but I'm a huge nerd for this kind of stuff, so it was very worthwhile. Essentially, what I did is I ran 1,000 simulations of the meet, assuming some improvement for tapering from the current seed times. We don't have to get into the nitty-gritty on that, but the upshot is that based on these simulations, expect the Georgia Tech women to finish with a total of 170.95 points, good for 10th place out of the 15 teams at ACC's. The men, 264 and ninth place. There are huge caveats on that. Like I said, a lot of variance here. It's a very ranked, um, highly ranked meet. There are UVA, we've mentioned, Stanford's third in the country, Cal sixth, NC State, Louisville are tied for eighth in the country. So very, 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 very top heavy meet. Those lower scoring points are going to be a little bit harder to come by for the women. And those four or five teams I mentioned, UVA, are all very tightly clustered for the top six places. So very, very top heavy there. The men, they are Georgia Tech men's women dive is currently ranked in the top 25 of the coaches poll. They are currently 21st, but there are, count them, Cal, NC, Stanford, Louisville, Virginia Tech, UNC, Florida State, and UVA in front of them in those rankings, with SMU also receiving votes. So ninth place, that's also what the coaches have deemed us by proxy, with their top 25 votes there. I want to put that big asterisk on it, though, is that these rankings take into account diving. That's great. Max Fowler, a name to know going into this. Matt is seated at the top of both, I believe both the 1 meter and the 3 meter, as well as pretty high in the platform as well. One thing I learned going through this, it seems like a lot of schools have not had their athletes submit, seeds in the psych sheet for platform diving events. Those results could be all over the place. That's Georgia Tech likely probably winds up in a very similar window. This is kind of the neighborhood they've been parked in the last couple of years, if you will. I guess it implies a seventh place finish last year at Stanford and Cal, which is higher than they were. But all that to say, it's a weird year with Stanford and Cal and SMU in the mix. They're all three quality teams, and shoot, I mean, I don't think Tech has much of a shot to win just based on the psych sheet math, but it wouldn't shock me anywhere between, you know, sixth or seventh or 12th or 13th. Maybe not 13th, but BC, Notre Dame, Miami. There's a lot of weirdness going on there, but you get the point.
We just got to do what Virginia does. Take one national team, make it the swim team. We've been working on Turkey, just making them our. We got to keep working this Turkey thing and make them our team. The whole national team becomes our team. That's just
Oh
Yeah,
boy. Yeah, that would be something.
yeah.
We
I think it would be something, but maybe we I don't know. Maybe we need to have just recreating Caio Pampudis and
yes.
in the aggregate.
Christian Ferraro in the aggregate. Yeah, trying to find a way to moneyball my way to a reference there. But hey,
Oh
always
boy.
remember relay points are worth double. So if we can
Yeah.
jump up a spot or two there, that's where your quickest returns are going to be. So
Yep. We should get some good stuff from Berkey Saka too, which will be fun. I mean, I know these big meets have been not the best for Tech, so I think seeing Berkey and guys like that, who else? What Kapinski do well, Romero do well, Bognar do well. Like there's guys here that can
Otorici.
score. Yeah, Otorici as well. Like there's guys here who can score. So they hopefully be a good meet there is promising because I know what Berkey at least will swim NCAAs. So
yeah,
this will be a
I
good
think and
a
I think
preview
the
for that.
only implied a finish that we've got just based on these numbers are uh, the Berkey Sake entry in the 200 IM. So hopefully they taper pretty quick. That's my hope.
Yep. Yep.
Good stuff. I think that about wraps it up for the ACC championships discussion. Other Georgia Tech teams in action this past week and weekend, or I guess coming in action this later this week. Golf will be at the Watersound Invitational at PCB at the Sharks Tooth Golf Club. That actually starts tomorrow. That's the 17th through the 19th. Club Lacrosse. Jack, you wanna tell me about Club Lacrosse very quickly?
Well, so I finally go to a game. I finally get my way out there. It's not the most fun weather day, but whatever. I like any excuse to go see live sports. In a day where we there was two walk-off wins on campus between Biondango and Drew Burris. I of course go to the one where the other team gets a walk-off win in Northeastern beating Tech in overtime
Oh, I didn't think
12-11.
about it like that.
Um, I had a two-thirds chance of seeing a walk-off win on campus, and I went to the one that wasn't ours. Or I had a 100% chance of seeing a walk-off win on campus. Actually, I just went to the one that wasn't a Tech one. It was cool to finally see him play. They were up a pretty sizable amount, and Northeastern just kept chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. And we just our Tech's transition offense, awesome. Love how fast they get down the field and put ball in net. But Northeastern basically was just a brick wall in the second half, and it was hard to get around them. But it was cool for that. Cool to finally see him play. And their parents traveled well. There was a lot of Northeastern folks there, which was impressive.
Good stuff. Their next fixture Sunday versus or at Alabama, excuse me, not and versus Alabama. Real-time follow-up on softball, who we mentioned earlier. That game versus Mississippi State has gone final. That is an 11-3 loss.
Ah, darn.
Womp
I was
womp
hoping for less than 10. Oh, well.
womp womp. Mr. Grant, trivia for this week?
No, the time I spent that normally goes into trivia was certainly spent putting together the old giant simulation of Georgia Tech and ACC swimming results. One errata and addendum. I did flip the 200 medley relay women and men results, but fear not, it didn't move the needle really at all in terms of any places. But I'm also a completionist, so you're welcome.
Hooray.
Should publish the results. You should just put them up as power ranking, like ACC swim power rankings, and it would do the numbies on the blog.
I really should. I should write this up. Okay,
It'd
maybe
be
maybe I will
fun.
do that when we're
It'd be
off the horn.
fun.
If this shows up on the site, just know that this is why that's up there. But
Podcast listeners had it first. You gotta
They
put that
did.
on there.
For
You
those
gotta
that
that's gotta
yes.
be the lead line on it. It's like if you listen to our podcast, You heard about these results and the errors that they had in V1 before anyone else.
See, this is where I'll plug hand transcribing through bootleg PDF to Excel conversions is you know, not my favorite, but we make do what we can. It's if only there was a way to export these in nice comma separated formats. But the ACC, if you're listening, please do that for me. My this one strange nerd,
Why
you
would
know.
you ever put things in, machine readable formats? Like, I feel like in our long history of doing college data science or college sports analytics of any kind, we've learned not to trust the powers that be with machine readable data formats.
Well, I'm sure y'all appreciate that the reason I figured out that there was something weird is because Miami men's had a relay score, and I was like, they don't do that. But maybe one day Miami men's swimming will come back, but t today is not that day. Gents, anything else before we go?
Nope, I think we're good to take our stroll out of here.
All right. Well, in that case, you all know where to find us. You're great listeners, and we appreciate you sticking around with us for another week. But in case you are a first-time listener, you can find us on FromTheRumbleSeat.com. You can email us from TheRumbleSeat@gmail.com. We put tons of content on the site in addition to this fine podcast, and we love hearing from you through those comments and also through the emails. Let us know what you want to hear from us over here. You can find us on Blue Sky, FTRS blog. I'm at Jake Grant. 98. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. I believe he's still on Twitter as well. You can find Section 103 on Twitter at Section 103 and Section103.com. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at FromTheRumbleSeat.com and podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Till next time, good night, good luck. Go Jackets.